Hello everybody, my name is Philip Cade and I'm the executive chef at Illinois State University for Event Management, Dining, and Hospitality. And before we start making our eggs Florentine this morning, I would just like to thank everybody for their donations to Illinois State University and just knowing various students that they've made a difference too. So today we're going to make eggs Florentine, which is a spin-off of eggs Benedict, which is a classical French dish. So the difference is with this one, this is a vegetarian dish. So instead of using Canadian bacon, we're going to go ahead and use tomatoes and spinach. Everything else is pretty much going to be the same. There was a little difference. We couldn't find tarragon, so we're going to go ahead and use dill sauce today instead. So it's not going to be your classical sauce béarnaise, but we'll get into that later. So to start with, when I make this dish, the first thing I like to do is go ahead and get all of my waters going here and stuff. It does take several pots. So we're going to go ahead and start the water that we're going to poach the eggs in. And what we're going to do with that is we're just going to go ahead and add the salt and white vinegar to the pan and just add that to your water. And what we're going to do with that is we're going to bring that to a boil. And then we're going to turn it down to a simmer of about 155, 160 degrees. So that's going to be, we're going to go ahead and start that. We are also going to start the water for our sauce béarnaise or our hollandaise sauce that we're going to be making. Same thing with that. We just want to get the water back. We want to bring it to a boil. And then we're going to turn it down to a simmer because if you have that too hot when you're making your hollandaise sauce, you are going to scramble your eggs, and that is not a good thing. That's not what we want to do. For the hollandaise, we're going to go ahead and start the butter. And there we go. So we want to melt the butter down, and it needs to be about 165 degrees once we start incorporating it into the eggs. So as you can see here, we already have everything cut up and prepped. So we have the tomatoes, we have the spinach, which is already blanched off. So to do the spinach, I just took fresh spinach, put it in salted boiling water, maybe 20 seconds, strain it out, hit it into an ice bath, and then I squeezed all the water out of it like that. So that is important that you have all of that ready before you start this dish. So what we're going to do to start out with is we're going to take our bowl and we're going to start our hollandaise sauce, which will then become sauce béarnaise. So in order to do that, you need to separate your eggs. So you just crack your egg, take off your top. Oh, I'm doing this wrong here. Take off your top. And then we're going to separate the egg yolk. We're going to take the egg whites away. And we want to get as much of that stuff off. If you see a membrane like that, you kind of want to pull that off as well. Okay, so we're going to do 4 eggs like that. And you can either keep the egg whites for another use, egg white omelet, or there's several recipes that call for egg whites, or I think most people just discard them, but that is up to you. Some people like to go back and forth in the eggshell so their hands don't get dirty. I always just find it easier to use your hands when you're doing it to make sure you get as much out of there as possible. The next step that we're going to do is we're going to start our reduction. We're going to throw our shallots in there. We're going to throw our vinegar. We're going to put our lemon juice. And then we're just going to put that on a burner right here. And what we're going to do with that is reduce it by half. So when you start, you just kind of look at your pan and kind of see how much is in there. Put that on bring that to a boil. And like I said, you just want to cook that down and reduce it by half to strengthen the flavors a little bit. If you look into this pan here, you'll see that this is already boiling this water. So we're just going to go ahead and turn that down to a simmer as well. All right, so while we're waiting for that to reduce, we are going to go ahead and brush our tomatoes with olive oil. Get that out of the way. We are going to brush it with olive oil, and then we're going to season it with salt and pepper and Italian seasoning. If you have fresh herbs available, thyme, rosemary, parsley, oregano, feel free to substitute any of that stuff for your Italian seasoning. So we're just going to brush them. Brush them with olive oil. All right, and then we're going to season them all. And there's going to be enough seasoning in this dish that we're only going to really season one side of this instead of two. Again, just a little bit of seasoning just for a little bit of added flavor, not a ton. You don't want to coat it. You don't want to overpower the tomatoes so you don't taste them with this stuff. Our butter is melted, so I'm going to go ahead and temp that. So we're a little hot on the butter, so I'm going to go ahead and take that off the heat for right now and just set that off to the back. You can see the reduction going down. Temper water. Going to turn that down a little bit as well. This is what we're going to poach our eggs in. Then we have that going to a very small simmer right there. So we're going to go ahead and start making our hollandaise sauce. When we start doing this, what you want to do, so on here, this isn't really necessary for home cooking. It's nice to have in a professional kitchen, or if you're someone who uses a double boiler a lot for chocolates and baking and things like that. It is a nice thing to buy. They're about $20. They're called stabilizers. I don't have one at home because I don't do a lot of it. So just put it on there, and we're going to start whisking it. I like to use what they call a French whisk, and a French whisk is it's a thinner whisk, and what that'll do is it'll help bring your it'll help start putting the bubbles into your egg yolks, and that'll allow the butter to incorporate into it, and that's a big thing. So when you look at this here, you're starting to see bubbles come into that. And I'm going to look at this here. So I'm going to remove that from the heat just a little bit. You never want to leave your egg yolks on the double boiler while you're doing this, because if you're not stirring it, because then they will just scramble and then your sauce is going to be ruined. Where did my bowl go? So right now we're just going to go ahead and strain this. As you can tell, it is reduced by half. We're going to strain the shallots out of it. Get those out of the way. All right, so there were a few shallots ended up in there, but that's all right. So now we're going to put just a little bit of the reduction, and you can see how the bubbles have started to go in there. So we're just going to add just a little bit of that in there. Save it. And then we're going to start, same thing, we're going to start whisking. And again, you get the bubbles back into it. I'm going to grab a ladle real quick, and we're going to start incorporating the butter. All right, again, my water in here is simmering. It's not boiling. So we're going to start that. And then we're just going to start adding butter. Nice slow stream. Not too slow, steady might be a better word for it. You may use all the butter, you may not. It depends on how big your eggs are, and I'm not sure of all the chemistry that goes along with it, but sometimes you need more, sometimes you don't. So I always start out with a little extra. So you can see here I've started to lose my bubbles. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull it off a little bit and get those bubbles back in it. Because if you don't have the bubbles, your butter isn't incorporating into the sauce. And that's going to cause it to break and separate. We got the bubbles back. And we're going to add a little bit of butter again. And I think we are about done with the hollandaise. All right, so we're going to go ahead and turn off the heat, and we're going to set that to the side just for the moment. Before we serve it, we're going to probably add a little bit more of the reduction, and we're going to add some salt and pepper to season it. But for right now, we're just going to let it sit and see how it turns out. All right. So at this point, we're going to start cooking 3 different things all at one time here. So we're going to go ahead and turn our pans on and get them a little bit warm. I'm going to go ahead and pull this butter over here, and we are going to go ahead and just butter our English muffins. At home, I use the butter spray, but we have all the fun stuff here to do it right. So, just going to put a little, brush some butter on them. Or you can use a toaster at home if you don't want to do it this way. It's however you want to do it, prefer to do it. Some people like to put them in the oven. That way they come straight out of the oven and they don't have to mess with doing it. But again, that is different ways of doing it. I am going to go ahead and just start with the tomatoes. And we're going to go ahead and use this pan over here. Kind of hear that sear a little bit. We're going to go ahead and use our spinach pan for that last piece of tomato. And we're going to go ahead and start heating up our spinach. It doesn't have to be, the pan doesn't have to be super hot. All right. We'll start our English muffins. All right, so we're going to go ahead and taste this. I already know that it doesn't have, see how thick it's gotten? So that means we're going to have to add a little bit more of the reduction, and we're going to add some seasoning. So I haven't seasoned it yet, so I'm going to go ahead and throw a little salt and pepper in there. And I'm going to go ahead and hit it with a little more of the reduction. I'm going to whisk it back up. And give it a little taste. So that's pretty good, actually. Normally it takes a little more effort than that, but that one worked out pretty well. And keep stirring this up. I'm going to check my English muffins. I'm going to get them a little bit toastier than that, a little bit darker. flip my tomatoes over. So the tomatoes, I want to make sure that I don't overcook them. If they get overcooked, they get really juicy and they make your dish soggy. So that's why it's important when I cut these, I cut them fairly thick so they don't fall apart in the cooking process. And it just makes for a better dish. That one over. Stir that up. Alrighty, so I'm going to turn this down. Looks like all of this is pretty much cooked except for the English muffin. So I'm just going to turn these off. Set them in the back here. That way they stay warm. One of the tricks at home that I like to do is I put this on the back of the oven and I have the actual oven on. So the heat coming out of the oven keeps everything warm as you're finishing your dish up. So, let's see here. I'm going to pull the water closer to me so we can, it's easier to work with. In this application here, you're going to need a slotted spoon and you're going to need your eggs. Okay, so each dish gets 2 eggs. So we're going to go ahead and do 4 dishes right now, and then we'll do 4 classical eggs Florentine dishes, and then or two orders. I'm sorry, and then the last 2 orders we're going to do with a little bit of a twist. So we bring our water to a boil, like you can see there, and I'm just going to turn it down just a little bit to where it's simmering. So we're going to put 4 eggs in there. You want to drop your eggs as close to the water as you can so they don't fall apart. You want to keep your eggs whole. So it does get a little hot when we're doing this. All right. So while the eggs are poaching, we're going to go ahead and we're going to start setting up our dishes. We're going to set up our tomatoes. So we have our English muffins right here. We're going to grab 1 tomato slice per muffin. That one's a big slice there. And we're going to go ahead and grab our spinach. You might want to use tongs on this if it's hot. We grab a little bit of spinach. So I like to make a nest. That way when you put your egg in there, your egg sits in there nice and neat and doesn't roll off the English muffin. So there you can see on here that we have a nice little nest made. And that's where our poached eggs are going to go. So I'm going to look at these eggs real quick. See, if you look at that water, that's going a little too fast right now. You don't want your water boiling that much. So we're going to look in here. We're going to find our egg. And you see this one, there's not a lot of egg. You see that kind of dripping off there? To me, that's perfect. If that was runny and falling off, your egg's not quite done yet. So we're going to go ahead and put our poached egg right there. So the reason some of the egg whites fell off there, the difference between that egg and that egg, is because the water was boiling too hard. And the eggs separated because of the boiling water. All right. So again, it's important to get as much water out of there as possible. I'm going to go ahead and start poaching 4 more eggs, and then we're going to finish these up. So we're going to look back at our hollandaise. I'm going to put it back on the heat real quick, just so it's not a cold sauce. And so for this dish, we're just going to keep it a classical hollandaise sauce. So a hollandaise is a mother sauce. Some people call it an egg sauce. And from that is where you can get your sauce béarnaise from, and some different derivatives of a hollandaise sauce. But a hollandaise is your classical, one of your 5 classical mother sauces. So we're just going to go ahead and put this much on there. Do about an ounce, ounce and a half per muffin. My wife likes about 3 ounces of sauce per muffin. And then we're just going to garnish this one with a little bit of green onions. All right, and that is your eggs Florentine. So what we're going to do now with the rest of these ingredients are we're just going to do a little bit of, I bought this pancetta from the store. It was already diced up. I just sauteed it up and got it a little bit crispy. And then just bought some smoked salmon. So same thing with this. We're going to go ahead and get our plates. So your traditional eggs Benedict would just be some seared Canadian bacon. Then it would be the eggs and the hollandaise. Again, we're going to build our nest for our eggs. And for this one, we're just going to go ahead and right now start putting our pancetta into the dish right here. And we are going to add some dill. Like I said, this is supposed to be tarragon, but couldn't find any, so we're just going to go ahead and use dill, which will actually go really nice with the smoked salmon. And this hollandaise sauce and the derivatives of it, like sauce béarnaise, is great on all seafood. If you want to make oyster Rockefellers, it's pretty much the same ingredients. It's oysters, it's spinach, it's Parmesan cheese. You can throw some pancetta in there, and you can put your sauce on there. If you have a piece of salmon at home and you want a sauce for it, this hollandaise sauce is a really easy way to do that. So again, you see my water's boiling a little bit too much again. I'm going to turn that down. Getting our eggs out. So on this one, we're going to go ahead and we're just going to take some of this smoked salmon and really just kind of put a piece right over the egg there. You can put it under the egg and have it ready if you want to. For this one, we're just going to put it right over. We're going to stir in the dill. And so you see how the sauce has gotten thicker? So when your sauce gets thick, now we've got hot water, so we turn it down really slow. We're just going to put a drop in there just like that. Stir it back up, maybe a little bit more. And you see how it starts to loosen up, and you don't really lose any flavor that way. So, we're going to do that. And get our ladle. All right, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to garnish this one with just a little more pancetta. All right, and there you go. You have eggs Florentine, eggs basically eggs Benedict 3 different ways, I guess what you could say. So that's it. That's the dish. Bon appetit. I hope you enjoy it. So.